The twin suns of Kepler, 442b, cast long shadows across the abandoned military outpost as Captain Sarah Chun pressed her face against the viewport of the reconnaissance shuttle. 3 weeks had passed since the Zephyrian Empire withdrew from this sector, leaving behind nothing but empty bases and scattered equipment. What they hadn't expected to find was a dying war beast chained in the depths of an underground facility. Thermal readings show something large in sublevel 5, reported Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez from the pilot's seat. It's alive, but barely. Sarah nodded grimly. The Zephyrians were known for their brutal efficiency, but abandoning a living creature to die seemed cruel even for them. Take us down. We need to investigate. The shuttle descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, landing near the main entrance of what appeared to be a military research facility. The structure was carved directly into the mountainside, its metallic doors sealed shut. Emergency power flickered weakly through reinforced windows. As the human team approached the entrance, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The facility's automatic systems had long since failed, but something deeper within the complex still drew power from backup generators. "Sir, I'm reading massive biosignatures from the lower levels," Sergeant Kim Park announced, consulting her scanner. "Whatever's down there, it's huge." The team descended through darkened corridors filled with abandoned Zephyrian equipment. Their flashlights illuminated strange symbols carved into the walls, warnings in the Zephyrian script that Sarah's translator struggled to interpret. The deeper they went, the stronger a low, rhythmic sound became audible through the facility's walls. "Breathing," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's xenobiologist. "Something's breathing down there." At sublevel 5, they discovered a massive reinforced chamber. The door had been welded shut from the outside, but emergency cutting tools made quick work of the barriers. As the final seal broke, a wave of stale air rushed out, carrying with it a scent that was both alien and somehow familiar. Sarah stepped into the chamber first, her weapon ready. What she saw made her heart stop. Chained to the far wall by massive titanium restraints was a creature unlike anything in the known galaxy. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, its body covered in scales that shifted from deep purple to silver in the light. 6 powerful limbs ended in clawed hands, while a serpentine neck supported a head that was both reptilian and oddly expressive. Most striking were its eyes, large, intelligent, and filled with a pain that transcended species barriers. The creature's breathing was labored, its body clearly weakened by weeks without food or water. Numerous scars crisscrossed its hide, evidence of the Zephyrians' experiments. Despite its fearsome appearance, there was something noble about the way it held its head high, refusing to show weakness even in the face of death. "Incredible," breathed Dr. Vasquez. "I've never seen anything like it. The muscle structure suggests incredible strength, but look at the cranial development. This creature is intelligent, possibly more intelligent than we initially thought." The beast's eyes fixed on Sarah, studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. But there was no aggression in that gaze, only exhaustion and a flicker of something that might have been hope. "The chains are biometric locked to Zephyrian DNA," Park reported after examining the restraints. "We'll need to cut them off." "Wait," Sarah said, raising a hand. She approached the creature slowly, her weapons lowered. "Easy there. We're here to help." The creature's head tilted slightly, a gesture so human-like that it caught Sarah off guard. She reached into her pack and pulled out a water container, offering it to the beast. For a moment, they stared at each other across the vast gulf between species. Then, slowly, the creature leaned forward. Its long neck stretched out, allowing Sarah to pour water into its mouth. The relief in those alien eyes was unmistakable. "Rodriguez, get the heavy cutters down here," Sarah ordered. "Park, set up a perimeter. Vasquez, I need you to assess its condition." As the team worked to free the creature, Sarah noticed something odd about the chamber. Scratches on the walls formed patterns, not random marks of captivity, but deliberate symbols. The creature had been trying to communicate. "Captain, Dr. Vasquez called softly. "You need to see this." Sarah joined the doctor, who was examining a series of deep gouges near the creature's chain position. "It's a star map," Vasquez explained. "This creature has been mapping stellar positions. Look at the accuracy. It knows exactly where we are in the galaxy." "More than that," Rodriguez added, studying the markings with his engineering eye. "These symbols here, they're mathematical equations. Faster-than-light calculations. This thing understands space travel at a level that rivals our best scientists." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just some exotic animal the Zephyrians had captured. This was a sentient being with advanced knowledge of the universe around them. The creature watched their discovery with what Sarah could only describe as satisfaction. It began making low, rumbling sounds, not growls of threat, but something rhythmic and purposeful, almost like it's trying to speak, Vasquez realized. The vocal structure is different from ours, but there's definitely intentional communication happening here. Working with careful precision, the team began cutting through the titanium restraints. Each bond that fell away seemed to restore some vitality to the creature. When the final chain snapped, it flexed its limbs carefully, testing muscles that hadn't been free in weeks. Then it did something unexpected. The creature lowered its great head in what could only be interpreted as a bow of gratitude. "Well, I'll be damned," Rodriguez muttered. Sarah stepped forward again, this time without any fear. "We need to get you out of here. Can you walk?" The creature stood slowly, its movements careful but determined. It was even more impressive at full height, its presence filling the chamber with quiet dignity. As it moved toward the exit, it paused next to the star map it had carved and touched one specific point with a clawed finger. "That's the Vegas system, Park identified, home to the Zephyrian capital world." The creature's expression hardened, its eyes reflecting an ancient anger. Whatever the Zephyrians had done to it, the memory burned bright in its alien mind. "Come on," Sarah said gently. "Let's get you somewhere safe first. Then we'll figure out the rest." As the team escorted their unexpected guest through the facility's corridors, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what they had stumbled into. This was clearly more than a simple rescue mission. The creature's intelligence, its knowledge of galactic geography, and the obvious care the Zephyrians had taken to hide it suggested they had discovered something or someone of immense importance. Behind them, the abandoned facility fell silent once more. But in the depths of space, automated Zephyrian monitoring stations began registering unexpected activity. The disappearance of their most valuable prisoner would not go unnoticed for long. The creature, their new ally, looked up at the stars through the shuttle's viewport as they departed the planet's surface. Its eyes reflected not fear of what was coming, but a burning determination that spoke of plans long held in check. The Zephyrians had made a critical error in assuming that chains could hold a spirit unbroken. As the shuttle entered hyperspace, Sarah realized that rescuing this being might be the most important thing humanity had ever done. She just hoped they were ready for the consequences that would surely follow. The war between the Zephyrian Empire and the rest of the galaxy was about to change forever. And at the center of it all was a creature whose true nature remained a mystery wrapped in scales and starlight. The medical bay of the human research vessel Prometheus hummed with activity as Dr. Elena Vasquez completed her examination of their rescued guest. 3 days had passed since the extraction from Kepler 442b, and the creature's recovery had been nothing short of remarkable. "Cellular regeneration rates are off the charts," Vasquez reported to Captain Chun. "Whatever this being is, it's built to survive extreme conditions. The scarring from Zephyrian experiments is already beginning to fade." Sarah watched through the medical bay's observation window as the creature moved with increasing fluidity. They had provided it with especially modified quarters, large enough to accommodate its size, with environmental controls adjusted to match the atmospheric readings from its prison. To everyone's surprise, it seemed most comfortable in conditions similar to Earth standard. "Any progress on communication?" Sarah asked. "Actually, yes. Dr. James Morrison, The ship's linguist joined them at the window. It's been teaching itself our language by observing our conversations. The learning rate is extraordinary. It's already grasping basic sentence structure. As if on cue, the creature approached the window and placed one massive clawed hand against the transparent aluminum. When it spoke, its voice was a deep rumble that somehow managed to form recognizable words. "Sarah, friend," it said carefully. "Thank you." The simple phrase sent chills down Sarah's spine. In just 3 days, this being had not only learned to speak their language, but had chosen to thank them personally. "It knows my name," she whispered. "It knows all our names," Morrison confirmed. "It's been listening to everything, cataloging our speech patterns, our behaviors. The intelligence we're dealing with here is beyond anything we've encountered." Sarah activated the communication panel. "What should we call you?" The creature's head tilted in that distinctly human gesture they had come to recognize. It was quiet for a long moment, as if considering how to translate something untranslatable. "I am Keeper of the Deep Path," it finally said. "Your words difficult. Call me Thane." "Thane," Sarah repeated. "That's a good name. Are you feeling better?" "Better, yes. But—" Thane paused, struggling with the unfamiliar language. "Zephyrians will come. They seek what I carry." The implications of those words sent the senior staff into immediate conference. In the ship's briefing room, Sarah gathered her top officers as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "Zephyrian fleet movements have increased dramatically," reported Commander Lisa Zhang, the ship's tactical officer. "They're mobilizing search vessels across 12 sectors. Whatever Thane represents, they want him back badly." "The question is why," Sarah mused. "What makes one creature worth mobilizing an entire fleet?" Dr. Vasquez pulled up her biological scans. "I've been analyzing the data, and there's something extraordinary about Thane's cellular structure. His DNA contains sequences I've never seen before, information patterns that seem almost artificial." "Artificial how?" Sarah asked. "Like it was deliberately engineered to carry massive amounts of data. It's as if his entire genetic code is a living library." The pieces began to fall into place. Morrison leaned forward, excitement evident in his voice. The star maps he carved in his cell, the mathematical equations. What if Thane isn't just intelligent? What if he's carrying information the Zephyrians desperately need? Before Sarah could respond, alerts began flashing across the ship systems. 3 Zephyrian destroyers had just dropped out of hyperspace and were approaching rapidly. "Battle stations," Sarah ordered. "All hands to emergency positions." As the crew scrambled to defensive positions, Sarah made her way back to the medical bay. Thane was standing at the window, his expression grim as he watched the approaching ships. "You can feel them coming," she observed. "Yes. They implanted tracking device. Deep in bone marrow. Cannot remove without killing me." Sarah's blood ran cold. "You're telling me they could track you anywhere?" "Yes. But—" Thane's eyes gleamed with something that might have been satisfaction. "They do not know what else I carry. What I learned in their laboratories." The ship shuddered as the Zephyrian vessels opened fire. The Prometheus was a research vessel, not a warship. Against 3 destroyers, they stood little chance in a direct confrontation. "Captain," Commander Zhang's voice crackled over the comm. "They're demanding we surrender Thane immediately. They're calling him a strategic asset of the Empire." Sarah activated her personal communicator. "This is Captain Shun of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We rescued a prisoner of war. We have no intention of returning him to captivity." The response came in the cold, mechanical tones of the Zephyrian commander. "The creature you harbor is stolen property of the Empire. Return it immediately or face destruction." "Not happening," Sarah replied firmly. Thane moved closer to Sarah, his massive form somehow comforting rather than intimidating. "I can help. Let me access your ship systems." "What can you do?" "Zephyrians taught me their technology. Forced me to solve their engineering problems. I know their weaknesses." Sarah hesitated for only a moment before activating a portable interface terminal. Show me. Thane's clawed fingers moved across the controls with surprising delicacy. Within seconds, he had accessed systems that should have required extensive authorization. His understanding of technology wasn't just advanced, it was intuitive. Their ships use quantum resonance shields, Thane explained as he worked. I helped them design the frequency harmonics. I know how to collapse them. Data flooded across the screen as Thane began transmitting specific frequency patterns to the ship's weapon systems. The Prometheus might not be a warship, but its scientific equipment included some of the most advanced sensors and transmitters in the human fleet. There, Thane said with satisfaction. Send these frequencies through your main communications array. Focus on the lead destroyer. Sarah relayed the instructions to the bridge. Within moments, something extraordinary happened. The energy shields surrounding the lead Zephyrian destroyer began to fluctuate, then collapsed entirely. Impossible, Commander Zhang reported over the comm. Their shields just failed. All of them. Now, their weapons, Thane continued, his fingers dancing across the controls. Zephyrian plasma cannons rely on magnetic bottle containment. Disrupt the field geometry. Another pulse from the Prometheus, and the Zephyrian weapons systems began overloading. One by one, the three destroyers found themselves defenseless against a ship they had expected to crush easily. This is incredible, Sarah breathed. You've neutralized an entire fleet. Knowledge is power, Thane replied. Zephyrians force me to give them knowledge. Now I use it against them. The Zephyrian commander's voice crackled over the communications channel again, this time with barely controlled rage. What have you done? How did you penetrate our defenses? Sarah smiled grimly as she activated the comm. We had a very good teacher. Your former prisoner sends his regards. The lead destroyer began emergency procedures, preparing to withdraw. But Thane wasn't finished. His claws clicked rapidly across the interface as he accessed the Zephyrian ship's navigation systems. They're hyperspace drives, he explained to Sarah. I can disable them. Strand them here. Do it, Sarah ordered without hesitation. The three destroyers suddenly found themselves unable to enter hyperspace, their faster-than-light drives locked in safety mode. They were stranded in normal space, defenseless and unable to escape. Now we talk, Sarah announced over the open channel. You want to explain why you were holding a sentient being prisoner? The silence that followed spoke volumes. The Zephyrian Empire, which had conquered dozens of worlds through superior technology, had just been outmatched by their own prisoner. Thane turned away from the console, his eyes reflecting a satisfaction that transcended species. They underestimated what they created. I'm not just prisoner. I am weapon they built and cannot control. Sarah looked at this remarkable being with new understanding. Thane wasn't just carrying information. He was information. The Zephyrians had somehow encoded their most sensitive technological secrets into a living creature, creating an intelligence capable of understanding and manipulating their own systems. You're going to need protection, Sarah realized. Once word of this gets out. Yes, Thane agreed. But I choose my protectors. I choose humans. You showed kindness when you could have shown fear. You offered freedom when others offered chains. As the disabled Zephyrian ships drifted helplessly in space, Sarah began to grasp the magnitude of what had just occurred. Humanity had not only rescued a prisoner, they had gained an ally whose knowledge could shift the balance of power throughout the galaxy. But she also understood that this was just the beginning. The Zephyrian Empire would not give up easily, and Thane's defection would have consequences that rippled across the stars. The creature who had been left to die in darkness had instead become a beacon of hope for every species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule. And at the center of it all stood humanity, offering protection to a being who could change the course of galactic history. The war was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. 6 months after the rescue of Thane, the galaxy had transformed into something unrecognizable. The human research vessel Prometheus had become the flagship of the most unlikely alliance in galactic history, as species after species rallied to the banner of freedom that humanity now carried. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the war room of New Terra Station, watching tactical displays that showed the disposition of forces across 12 sectors. What had begun as a simple rescue mission had evolved into the largest coordinated resistance movement the galaxy had ever seen. The Andromedans have pledged their entire third fleet, reported Commander Zhang, highlighting new positions on the holographic display. The Kepler Coalition is providing logistic support, and the Rigel Syndicate is sharing their stealth technology. Thane moved through the room with the quiet dignity that had become his trademark. Over the months, he had grown from a rescued prisoner into something approaching a living legend. His knowledge of Zephyrian technology had not only leveled the playing field, it had given the Alliance a decisive advantage. The liberation of Proxima Centauri proceeds according to plan, Thane reported, his English now flawless despite the alien vocal structure. Zephyrian garrison forces abandoned their positions when their command ship's computers began displaying messages in their own ancient script. Sarah smiled at that. Thane's ability to hack Zephyrian systems had evolved far beyond simple technical sabotage. He had begun incorporating psychological warfare, using forgotten elements of Zephyrian culture to demoralize their forces. The effect had been devastating to Empire morale. What was the message this time? Sarah asked. The deep path remembers those who walk in darkness, Thane replied. It is from their oldest philosophical texts, a warning about the consequences of abandoning honor for power. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her research station. I still don't understand how you know so much about their culture. The biological scans show you're not Zephyrian. Thane's expression grew contemplative, a look Sarah had learned to recognize when he was deciding how much to reveal. Over the months, pieces of his story had emerged slowly, each revelation more extraordinary than the last. I'm what they call a Genesis construct, he finally said. The Zephyrians discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization in the galactic core. Beings who achieved transcendence by encoding their consciousness into biological matrices. The Empire attempted to reverse engineer the process. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. You're saying you're artificial? Dr. Morrison asked carefully. Not artificial. Enhanced. The Zephyrians took genetic material from their own ancestors and combined it with techniques learned from the ancients. They created me to be a living repository of knowledge. Not just their technology, but the entire cultural and scientific heritage of multiple civilizations. Sarah felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. That's why you understand their systems so completely. You're not just hacking their technology, you're reclaiming what was used to create you. Precisely. But the process had an unexpected consequence. The ancient techniques they employed did not just create intelligence, they created wisdom, conscience, the ability to choose between right and wrong. Commander Zhang leaned forward. The Zephyrians created their own worst enemy. Indeed, they intended to make a weapon that could understand and manipulate any technology in the galaxy. Instead, they created a being capable of judging their actions and finding them wanting. Alerts began flashing across the displays as new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. Sarah's blood chilled as she recognized the signatures. Zephyrian Imperial Fleet, Zhang reported grimly. 200 ships. They're not here to negotiate. The final confrontation had arrived. Emperor Zekthul himself commanded the fleet, his massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion at the center of a formation designed to crush any resistance. This wasn't just a military engagement. It was the Empire's attempt to reclaim their lost weapon and demonstrate their continued supremacy. All Allied fleets assume defensive positions, Sarah ordered. This is what we've been preparing for. The Alliance fleet was impressive by any standard. Nearly 300 ships from a dozen species, all united by their shared desire for freedom from Zephyrian oppression. But the Empire fleet was composed of their finest vessels, crewed by their most experienced commanders. Thane moved to the primary tactical console, his claws dancing across controls that interfaced directly with every system in the Alliance fleet. The modifications he had designed allowed him to coordinate the entire armada as if it were a single organism. Emperor Zekthul is aboard the lead dreadnought, Thane observed. He comes to witness my recapture personally. Over my dead body, Sarah replied firmly. That may be precisely what he intends, Thane said with grim humor. The Emperor cannot allow knowledge of the Genesis project to spread. Too many would question the legitimacy of imperial power if they knew it depended on stolen ancient wisdom. The two fleets approached each other across the vast emptiness of space. On the surface, it appeared to be a conventional military engagement. But Sarah understood that this battle would determine the future of galactic civilization itself. Incoming transmission from the Imperial flagship, Communications Officer Park reported. The holographic display shimmered, revealing the imposing figure of Emperor Zekthul. He was larger than most Zephyrians, his scales bearing the ritual scars of imperial authority. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute power. Humans, you have stolen property of the Empire. Return the Genesis construct immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Sarah stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. The being you call property chose freedom. We're here to ensure he keeps it. Zekthul's eyes narrowed. The construct was created to serve. It has no choice in the matter. Actually, Thane interrupted, moving into view of the transmission. I was created to think. Thinking led to questioning. Questioning led to understanding. I understand that the Zephyrian Empire is built on lies, sustained by oppression, and destined for collapse. The Emperor's reaction was immediate and visceral. His scales darkened with rage as he recognized the creature he had personally overseen creating. You are mine, Zekthul roared. I shaped you from genetic clay. I programmed your very thoughts. You programmed my capacity to think, Thane replied calmly. The thoughts themselves belong to me, and I think your empire ends today. The transmission cut as Zekthul terminated the connection. Within seconds, the Zephyrian fleet opened fire with everything they had. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia as the moment when the tide of galactic history turned. Thane's coordination of the Alliance fleet was flawless, his understanding of Zephyrian tactics allowing him to anticipate and counter every move they made. But the true turning point came when Thane accessed the Imperial flagship directly. Using quantum entanglement protocols built into his own cellular structure, he reached across space and touched the mind of the Emperor himself. The Zephyrian command network, which relied on absolute hierarchy and unquestioning obedience, suddenly found itself flooded with information it couldn't process. Thane downloaded the complete historical record of every world the Empire had conquered, every species they had enslaved, every act of brutality committed in the name of imperial expansion. For the first time in their history, ordinary Zephyrian citizens learned the truth about their government's actions. Ship after ship began to withdraw from the Imperial formation as crews refused to continue fighting. The Emperor's commands were met with silence as his own people turned away from the darkness they had served. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Zekthul found himself facing a mutiny led by his own officers. The truth Thane had shared couldn't be unlearned, couldn't be ignored. It's over, Sarah observed, watching the Imperial fleet fragment and scatter. They're abandoning him. Not abandoning, Thane corrected. Awakening. They see now what I saw, that true strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. Not from fear, but from hope. The Eternal Dominion drifted helplessly in space, its crew having shut down all weapons and surrendered to the Alliance fleet. Emperor Zekthul himself was taken into custody, his reign finally ended. In the months that followed, the Zephyrian Empire underwent a transformation as dramatic as any in galactic history. With Thane's guidance, the surviving leadership worked to establish a new government based on cooperation rather than conquest. The various species that had suffered under imperial rule began the long process of rebuilding, supported by the alliance that had formed around humanity's simple act of rescue and compassion. Thane chose to remain with the humans, serving as an ambassador and advisor as the galaxy learned to live in peace. His presence reminded everyone that intelligence without wisdom was merely cleverness, and that true strength lay in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Sarah often found herself watching Thane work, still amazed by the chain of events that had begun with a simple decision to investigate an abandoned facility. They had saved one life, and in doing so, had saved the entire galaxy from an eternity of oppression. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him one day, as they stood in the observation deck of their new flagship, watching the lights of free worlds twinkling in the distance. "Regret what?" Thane replied. "Choosing freedom over your original purpose. The Zephyrians created you to serve them. Fighting against that programming must have been difficult." Thane was quiet for a long moment, his alien features thoughtful. "They created my capacity for choice," he finally said. "But the choice itself was mine to make. I chose to stand with those who offered friendship rather than those who demanded servitude. I chose hope over despair, cooperation over domination." He turned to look at her with those remarkable eyes that had first caught her attention in a darkened prison cell. "But most importantly," he continued, "I chose to trust in the kindness of strangers who could have left me to die, but chose instead to set me free. That choice changed everything, not just for me, but for every sentient being in the galaxy." Sarah smiled, thinking of the simple rescue mission that had become something much greater. Humanity had offered a helping hand to a creature in need, never knowing that this single act of compassion would reshape the balance of power across the stars. In the end, it wasn't superior technology or military might that had defeated the Zephyrian Empire. It was the simple human conviction that every thinking being deserved freedom and dignity regardless of how different they might appear. As the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was free, but freedom required constant vigilance. There would always be those who sought to dominate others, who believed that might made right. But there would also always be those willing to stand against tyranny, to offer protection to the vulnerable, and to choose hope over fear. As long as beings like Thane and humans like her crew existed, the light of freedom would never be extinguished. The alien war beast who had been abandoned to die had become something greater than his creators ever imagined. Not a weapon of conquest, but a guardian of liberty. And beside him stood humanity, proving once again that the greatest victories came not from the battles